We're now joined by former Mets general manager Jim Duquette. And Jim, over the years, we've seen sports figures keep their jobs despite driving under the influence incidents. Tony La Russa most recently comes to mind, but fairly or unfairly, they were more accomplished and well-known than Zack Scott. Do you see a way that Scott can continue as acting general manager of the Mets?
You know, I wouldn't totally rule it out here, Eamon, but I think it's going to be very, very difficult. I think in Tony's case, listen, that had happened previously to him becoming the manager of the White Sox, and he let them know ahead of time this was on the books. And, you know, but so there was a little extenuating circumstance there. But like you said, I mean, Zack hasn't been doing this for a long time. I think that the issue that you have with the Mets and what ownership had said as they have taken over there in this first year is they had a zero tolerance policy. And they really set the tone at the very beginning and going back to, you know, when they fired Jared Porter, that they weren't going to tolerate any type of behavior. And this is really in contrast to what the message is that you give to your players on a regular basis, or your front office people, anyone who works for the organization. And so I think it's going to be hard that, you know, because of that mixed message for them to keep Zack at this point.
Certainly, Scott was the one delivering messages such as that to the players. All right, you mentioned Jared Porter. When you tack this on to Mickey Callaway and Jared Porter, it's a third embarrassing scandal for the Mets in the last 9 months. So how poorly does this reflect now on Sandy Alderson?
Well, it does. Listen, it reflects poorly on him. It reflects poorly on the organization. There's no doubt. And really, when you're looking at the guy who's made the final decision in Sandy Alderson's case, yeah, it does, you know, and I think that's from an ownership side, you have to review the process that had taken place. You know, this is different when he was there the first time and he hired some of the guys in the front office. If you remember Paul DePodesta and JP Ricciardi, some of that group that was in his original front office, he had known them for a long time. This group of executives, he didn't know well. He was getting recommendations from others outside the organization, trying to do as much due diligence. But that's also flawed, as we've seen. So, you know, I'm not trying to exempt Sandy from all of this, but these are individuals that he hired that he thought were going to be good, that he didn't have a longstanding relationship with, too. So, yes, does Sandy bear a big part of this blame because he hired him? He does.
All right, so almost as soon as the Scott news broke on Wednesday, there were columns both nationally and here in New York that the Mets should turn to Theo Epstein. Putting aside whether or not Epstein would want the job, how can Steve Cohen now hold off the public sentiment that's going to grow and the urge to seriously pursue Epstein?
Well, I think you have to certainly look at two things. First, you have to settle the issue at the moment, right, and get through the rest of the season. But like you said, that is going to get louder and louder. And you know, when you look at Theo, I mean, the resume is pretty darn impressive, right? He has got 2 World Series rings. That's where you want to go. He's an experienced baseball guy. He's sitting over there in the commissioner's office where you don't really have to get permission from a team. You have to ask the commissioner for permission. It shouldn't be that big of a deal. I think at the very least, you have to open up a dialogue and see if he's interested and see if there's a match personality-wise. You know, philosophically, we know the success is there. So I don't think that that's going to go away, those calls for him. And I do think that he would owe himself and the organization by extending at least a conversation with Theo to see if there's something worth having a further conversation down the road.